You ever have that moment where you're just existing? You're not really trying to impress anyone. You're not doing anything out of the ordinary. You're just walking down the street, maybe humming a song, maybe laughing with a buddy, maybe completely lost in your own thoughts. And somewhere, maybe even right then, a woman notices you. She watches you. And for a moment, maybe longer, you become the main character in her private daydream. Here's the wild part. Most guys never know when it happens. They don't feel it. They don't recognize it. But women fantasize. They imagine stories, emotions, moments, and sometimes entire lives, all from the little things men do, especially when they don't even realize anyone's watching. And today, I want to talk to you about that. Let's take a second and be real. There's this huge myth floating around that men are the only visual creatures, that men are the ones who daydream, who build little fantasies in their heads, who imagine what it would be like to be with someone. But that couldn't be further from the truth. Women notice, they observe, and their minds quietly, secretly, begin creating these little movies in their heads. Some are playful, some are romantic, some are bold, and they often start with just one moment, one look, one behavior, not because you're showing off, not because you're flaunting money or flexing muscles, but because you were real, you were unfiltered, you were grounded in yourself. Let me tell you something that most guys don't realize. Women don't just fantasize about the guy who's rich or outrageously good-looking. Sure, those things catch attention, but fantasy, that comes from something deeper, something more emotional, something psychological. It could be the way you quietly focused on your coffee in a crowded cafe, or how you held the door open for an older woman without making a big deal about it. Maybe it was how you smiled at a child playing nearby, like you still remembered what it was like to be innocent and full of wonder, or how you stood in silence, not needing to fill the air with noise just to feel valuable. And then, just like that, her mind starts to wander. What kind of man is he? What would it be like to talk to him? What does his voice sound like when he's tired? Does he laugh with his whole face or just his mouth? Would he protect me? Would he be patient when I'm emotional? Would he remember my favorite song? That fantasy, it builds off very little, but it becomes something intense. Let's talk about presence for a second, because that's one of the biggest turn-ons for women, and most men don't even know they're doing it. Presence is when you're fully in your moment, when you're not trying too hard to impress, when you're not lost in your phone, when your body language says you're here, confident, calm, unbothered. It's not about arrogance, it's about grounded energy. There's something incredibly attractive about a man who doesn't need the world to validate him. A man who's steady, who speaks slowly, who listens more than he talks. A man whose eyes don't dart around the room, always searching, but instead who looks people in the eye like time doesn't control him. That kind of man. He lives rent-free in women's minds. There's another piece too, gentleness, not weakness, not passivity, but a strong gentleness. The kind of energy that says, I could fight, but I'd rather understand. The kind that makes a woman feel like she could let her guard down for a second and not be judged, that she could be soft and that softness would be safe in your hands. You ever see a guy pick up his dog and give it a kiss on the head like it's the most natural thing in the world? Or tie his little sister's shoe with a focused tenderness that says he actually cares? Women notice that, and something stirs in them, because in those moments you're showing more than actions. You're showing emotional safety. That's fantasy fuel right there. Let me tell you a story. A woman I once spoke to told me this. She was sitting on a train, headphones in, scrolling through her music. Across from her, there was this guy, probably late 20s, reading a paperback book. He looked ordinary, worn sneakers, faded hoodie, a little stubble. But the way he was reading, completely zoned in, like the rest of the world didn't exist. Every once in a while he'd smile just a little at something on the page, and she said her brain just took off. She imagined what kind of book it was, what kind of thoughts made him smile like that. She imagined what it would be like to talk to him about it, what kind of music he liked, whether he liked rainy days, whether he had a dog. She said for the rest of that ride, he was her fantasy, and he never once looked up to see her. That's the beauty and mystery of it all. You never know when you've left a mark on someone's imagination. So you may be wondering, how can you step into this kind of energy more? How do you become the kind of man who lives in women's minds without even knowing it? It starts with authenticity. The world is full of performers, people trying to be what others want, guys trying to be alpha, trying to be tough, trying to be heartless. But that's not what creates desire, not the deep kind anyway. Real desire, that grows in silence, in slowness, in unpredictability. It grows when a woman senses something about you that doesn't scream for attention, but gently pulls hers. It grows in the way you carry yourself when no one's watching, in the way you handle rejection without bitterness, in the way you protect your peace, in how you talk to a stranger or wait patiently in line, in the way your face softens when you talk about something you love. That's what she dreams about later, lying in bed with the lights off. You're not just a face, you're not just a body. You become a story, the question, a possibility. And here's the twist. Sometimes it's not even about wanting to be with you. Sometimes the fantasy is just a way for her to feel, to tap into something beautiful, to remind herself that there are still men out there with depth, with kindness, with quiet strength. So no, you don't have to be loud. You don't have to try hard. You don't have to become something you're not. You just have to be more of what you are, fully, unapologetically, gently. There's this phrase I love. Soft on the inside, steel on the outside. Be a man who can handle chaos, but chooses peace. Be a man who can lead, but knows when to follow. Be a man who holds doors open, not for recognition, but because he was raised with values. Be the kind of man who can sit in silence without needing to fill it. Be the kind of man whose kindness is intentional, not performative, because those are the moments women remember. You walking into the room without needing to be the center of it. You speaking slowly because you're not in a rush to prove yourself. You looking at her like she's the only person who matters in that moment. You laughing from your chest, you being human. And maybe, just maybe, a few hours later, she smiles to herself, remembering you. She replays the moment. She builds a little world where you're the one who stays. And even if she never sees you again, you were there, in her thoughts, in her secret world. So no, men don't always realize it. But women, they fantasize, they imagine. And the beautiful thing is, it often starts when you're just being your most honest self. Now, the only question left is, will you let yourself be seen? Will you give her something to remember? Because she's not looking for perfect, she's looking for real. And real is more powerful than you'll ever know.